organizing group.
Thank you, Dr. Gebissa. Good evening, everybody. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Bonnie as well. Oromo people cannot ask for any better friendship. It's really wonderful to have her here. Our next speaker is Professor Ezekiel Gebissa. What makes it easier to introduce Professor Ezekiel Gebissa is almost everybody here knows him. But just to make few remarks about him, we know him through the books he authored, co-authored, or edited. We know him through several articles he has written. We know him through his contribution to several journals and publications. And more recently, we know him as a most favorite go-to expert when it comes to Oromo protest because of his comprehensive and deep understanding of political, economic, social, and the cultural underpinning of Oromo protest. Professor Ezekiel Gebissa is currently teaching history at Catherine University in Michigan, and also he is a current president of Oromo Studies Association, OSA. With that, I would like to welcome Professor Ezekiel Gebissa to the stage.
Well, there's nothing left to say. Speaking of this fifth person, after the scholars have spoken, the family members have spoken, friends have spoken, from California to where messages have been sent, there's nothing left for me. Honestly, I had prepared remarks, but I'm not going to use that because it would be repetitious to say the same thing over and over again. But I agree with everything that was said.
Thank you.
I especially agree with Professor Muhammad that he stole my thunder. I would have said a whole lot of things better than he did, but I think I would like to say, because this is about Oromo Studies, he spoke about the Oromo Studies Association, her contributions to the making and the nurturing and the growth and the sophistication of the Oromo Studies Association. I could probably speak just a couple of things about Oromo Studies, her impact on Oromo Studies, what that is, how that is important to the production and dissemination of knowledge about the Oromo people. As you said, Bill, if you typed Oromia and Googled it in the 1970s, nothing comes up, but today about 3 million hits turn up. That's important. As much as that is true, what's more important is what she did for Oromo Studies. But before I get to that, and I'm going to set aside what I have here, let me say in public what I have said to you in private. You've been, for me and for many others, a friend, a colleague, a confidant, and you and I know that all of those three things mean a whole lot to me personally. In times of agony and trial, you've been my confidant, and for many others I know that. Recently, in the last 5 years in particular, there's nothing that I have written that you haven't looked at, that you haven't helped with, not only for me but for many others. And as a friend, we have traveled together, we have done all kinds of things together, we have shared moments of grief and hard moments. We were together in Munich, Bill, the day that you got good news. So it's that kind of relationship that we have. So if I didn't say that, I would be remiss that if I didn't express that kind of friendship and close cooperation in Oromo Studies. What did she do? And for many of you who are here, who are not familiar with Oromo studies, let me say this. What she did for Oromo studies is comparable to what Carter Goodson done for African American studies. In the 1960s, as part of the social transformation that swept around the world, that occurred in the United States of America, mainstream studies of America, American studies, it did not include African American studies, ethnic studies, race studies. There was a mainstream, and everybody was part of that current. They're not even tributaries. But Carter Goodson, really, I mean, he's the father, known as the father of American studies, or black studies, or Negro studies, as it was called at that time, or African American studies today, that American studies is not just one mainstream, but many tributaries flowing into making that stream. Oromo studies was completely invisible. In fact, in the 1960s, in the 1970s, it would be a treasonable crime to even utter the word Oromo studies. That colonization that you understood in the early 1980s probably, that Ethiopia is not the mainstream narrative that fought off European imperialism, but a collaborator in the scramble for Africa. What you realized at that time was true about Oromo studies as well. Even it's not only violence against the people, it's not violence against the land, it's not just the violence against everything that the Oromo had. The violence was against even knowledge about the Oromo. There was an epistemological knowledge about the Oromo. And in that respect, the book that many, of course it was an accident. Was that an accident? Because I'm just talking to Mr. Holcomb, that she came into an accident because the way she talks about it is that when you went to Ethiopia, you told her that you're trying to bring the light of the gospel to heathen people known as the Gala. And she asked you, as you told me, she asked you, do you speak their language? And you said, no. Then how could you bring evangelism and the light of the gospel to people whose language you don't know? And that's the irony that she had been trying to explain about the Oromo in the Ethiopian context. If it is famine, the two books that she had written, it is the irony of the fact that Ethiopia is well watered, the Oromo area is well resourced, but the people go hungry. How could that happen? What that book is saying, or the two books that she had written about famine in Ethiopia with Clay, that's what it is explaining. No, it's not about resources, the lack of resources. It's not because the farmers were lazy. It's a policy constraint, that there was some colonialism, there was some power in there that is making people hungry. That's the discovery. All of her life she was trying to extricate the study of the Oromo from the clutches of the epistemological colonialism of the Ethiopian state. So the this idea, and I will say this and I will stop. This book, The Invention of Ethiopia, was a turning point in this journey of Oromo studies. In what way? It said the invention of Ethiopia, an explanation of the dependent colonial state. That idea, that book, the thesis of that book provided, as I said before, the theoretical foundation and the framework, the discursive context for Oromo studies. It also gave language. It also provided language for many generations of students in college. The language of expansion, the language of state building was replaced by the language of subjugation, the language of oppression, the language of resistance. In that way, that book actually provided that epistemological break from the violence of Ethiopian studies. In the many generation of studies, the many generation of students that have written PhD dissertations, MA thesis, and BA thesis would be indebted to you, as all of us are. Thank you very much for liberating us. And that's what is written there. My topic was supposed to be speaking Bonnie Holcomb's contribution to Oromo struggle. I don't think she had ever picked up a gun, but she picked up that pen. All right? By so doing, by so doing, she taught us, emancipated our minds. And the emancipation of the mind simply precedes the actual liberation and emancipation. And we'll always be grateful to that, and the Oromo nation would always be grateful to that. Thank you very much.